there's some people in this room today. I got to come out and walk around. There's some people in this room that I've known for a very long time. And they'll testify to this, that I've never been athletic. I was never good at sports. I always wanted to be, though. A lot of friends that played sports. I wish that I could have played on some ball team somewhere, but I wasn't good at any of it, so I just watch a lot of sports, and I still do. Sports are pretty important to me. We watch a lot of sports at my house. I like the Carolina Panthers, even though they're really bad. I'm even kind of excited that we got a soccer team in Charlotte now. I'll even watch some of that, and I love the Atlanta Braves. Go Braves. It's not really been a great year for us, but chop on. I love the Braves. We watch a lot of sports at my house. And some years back, Deacon's in the room, my son. Feeling a little feedbacky there. We'll get that settled. But a few years back, I remember coming downstairs, and Deacon's watching TV. ESPN was on, as it almost always was at that time in my house, and I figured that Deacon is watching some game, and he wants me to sit down, and he wants me to watch TV with him. So I go and I sit down with Deke, and I realized when the commercial's over, this is not some game on ESPN. You know what he's watching? He's watching poker. It's the World Series of Poker, and I'm thinking, ESPN, come on, this is not a sport. You know, card playing is not a sport. If you can't break a sweat or there's at least some low-grade risk of bodily injury, I don't think it's a sport. Maybe it shouldn't be on ESPN, but he was watching it, and he was into it. He wanted me to watch it with him, and so I sat down. I really wanted to change the channel, but I sat down and I began to watch it with him, and, you know, I started getting kind of into it too. It's pretty intense. These two guys, there's been a tournament going on for weeks. Hundreds of people in the beginning, and now it's down to two dudes. And speaking of breaking the sweat, they were a couple of pasty-faced white guys, looked like they hadn't been out of their mama's basement in about 2 months, wearing sunglasses and a hoodie indoors, and they're up. It's just the two of them, and they're pacing around this table, and they're sweating, man, and it's intense. One hand, the turn of one more card, and both of them had taken what represented to be about $10 million worth of chips. They pushed everything, both of them, all the way to the middle of the table. The flip of one card, they had gone, what do they call that? Had gone all in. Now, I'll say from the outset, too, that this is not a message about gambling, okay? Bible talks about that. Don't go home and tell your wife, I like this Jesse guy. He says we're supposed to have Texas Hold'em night at men's group this week. It might be good for church attendance, but that's not what we're talking about. Don't send me any emails. But here's what we are talking about, is that I really can't think of a better way to illustrate exactly what I believe it is that the Lord Jesus is calling you and calling me to do every moment of every day of the rest of our lives. Everything we got, holding nothing back, everything we got, all of it, pushed all to the middle of the table, all in on just one thing. And that one thing is Him. Might be a little intense in spots today, but I'm going to extend to you the same invitation that I believe that Jesus extended to His disciples 2,000 years ago. Would you go all in with me? Would you push everything you got to the middle of the table, and would you take off and follow me? One step at a time for the rest of your life, and I'm telling you, if you will do that, if you will go on this adventure with me, that there is a reward. There is a reward that waits for you at the end, but also, if you do that, I might take you in some places and in some directions that you weren't really prepared to go. Some of the time it might not be real easy. Some of the time it's going to cost you something. See, it's easy to make a decision for Jesus. That's exciting, right? It's kind of like getting married. You know, you can get married in about 15 minutes in this country. Did you know that? It's not hard to do. You pay $50, you go to the courthouse. They even have drive-through places. You can roll down the window, some dude dressed up like Elvis come out to the car. I'm not saying I endorse it. I'm just saying it's still a legal marriage. I do a lot of weddings. Wedding day's fun. Everybody excited on the wedding day. People you hadn't seen in a really long time show up and bring you small kitchen appliances that you're never going to use. Envelopes full of money. They throw you a party after. People dance, you know. Everybody loves the wedding day. The wedding day's fun. I've been married 20 years this summer. Staying married 20 years or 40 or 50 years, it's hard. It's good. It's rewarding. Wedding day is really easy. Staying married 40 or 50 years and doing it happily is a hard thing. And here's what I want you to know. I want people to make decisions for Jesus. But making decisions for Jesus, it's really easy compared to spending your life following after him. And I want you to hear me. I want people to make decisions for Jesus. I want that to happen right here in this room every single week. I believe it happened for a lot of people last week. They heard the gospel message and they responded to it and they walked out of here different than when they came in. It was a beautiful thing to get to be a part of that. And I want that. I want it for some of you. I've prayed about that this week. I want it for some of you and for families that we haven't met yet and for people who are watching online around this country and all over this world. And I want it for your friends and your neighbors and your ball teams. I want them to make decisions for Jesus. I just don't think that's all we want. It's more than that. Yeah. Salvation comes in a moment. I believe that, don't you? Salvation comes in a moment, and salvation is free to you because he paid everything for you. The gift of grace is free, but to spend the rest of your life following after Jesus, it's really costly. And here's the problem when we don't tell people that up front. Is that we bring them in here, and we're glad to see them. And they hear the message, and they are moved by it, and they respond to it, and they make a decision for Jesus, and they walk out of here, and they are pumped, man. They're excited. Then life happens, doesn't it? And things get hard, and the road gets a little rocky, as it always does, doesn't it? They're like, I don't know about this. I mean, I made a decision, but, my mom got sick anyway. My kids still won't do right. My marriage is not getting better. It's getting worse. I'm not sure this is what I bargained for. This is not what I signed up for. And you know what they do? They turn back. Sometimes they fall away, and you've known people exactly like that. Some of you have been people like that. And here's the truth. It's hard to say, maybe hard to hear, but I'm just going to say it, that not everybody, in a room this size, not everybody's all in. Not everybody. And some of you come here, we're glad you do, and you like it, and you sing the songs, and you listen to the message, and you leave out of here encouraged by it in some way, I hope. But the truth is, that Monday through Saturday part, best you can tell, it's not making any real discernible, practical difference in your life in any way. And if that's you this morning, listen to me, we're glad you're here. We want you to keep coming. You are welcome here. But I'm not doing my job, at least not very well, if I don't at least mention to you that I believe there's more to this than just to come and to sit and to sing and to listen. Yes, amen. I like that part. That's a really good part. But it's not everything. I heard a preacher say one time that modern Christians have been exposed so regularly to small doses of watered-down Christianity that they have become completely inoculated against the real thing. There is truth in that, I believe. Yes. See, what happens is we come in here and we get excited about what happens here, and maybe we leave out of here, and then we go out into the world claiming, professing to be followers of Jesus. But we're rubbing shoulders with and doing life with a whole lot of people who do not claim to be followers of Jesus. But they're watching us. They're studying us. They're trying to figure out what is the difference. I mean, if that guy's a follower of Jesus and it doesn't make any more difference than that, then why should I be a follower of Jesus? Why is it then, if that's all the difference it makes, that I should push everything I've got, risk everything in my whole life on just one thing? See, our mission as it comes from Jesus is not just to go to church, it's to leave out of here and be it. Empowered to live out the gospel in such a way that it changes the world. It's my job and it's your job just the same. As we get started this morning, I just want to ask you the hard question right here in the beginning. Are you all in this morning? Like really all in? Have you really pushed everything that you've got to the middle of the table, staking it on just the one thing? Or are there some areas in your life where you're still holding out just a little bit? I really feel like I'm all in on this area, but in this area over here, man, I'm still holding back. I'm still holding back a little bit with my money. I'm still holding back with my time, with my devotion. I'm holding back in some area with this habit that I've been hanging on to for a really long time. Because here's what we think. Here's what we think, that if we hold out on him in some area, we think by holding out, it's going to keep us from missing out on some really fun stuff that this life has to offer. That's what we think. But here's what I'm telling you this morning. You're not missing out on anything that this world has to offer. You're missing out because you're holding out. You're missing out because you're holding out. You're missing out on the best that he has to offer. You're missing out on the blessings of hope and peace and joy in the midst of really hard times. You're missing out because you're holding out. And here's what I know, that 2,000 years ago, he didn't hold out, did he?
Right.
He didn't hold out on you. He went all in, and he calls you and I in response to that to go all in with him. We're going to look at 3 things today in this passage. Not a lot of verses, but some of the most foundational in all the Gospels. 3 things about going all in, and the first one is this, is that you got to deny yourself. Mark 8:34 says, and calling the crowd with him and his disciples, he said to them, if anyone would come after me, if anyone would, he says. If. So you think that he would say since, not if. You think that he would say, since everyone who hears this message and what I'm offering them in return will definitely want to come after me. It doesn't say since, he says if. Because Jesus knew then, just like you and I know now, that not everybody is going to be a follower of Jesus. So there's still some people who hear the message, and they know about the promise and the reward that waits for them at the end. And I imagine in that little crowd that he was talking to, there were some people, very likely, it doesn't say, but some of those people probably with their own eyes had seen the miraculous things that God had done. And I imagine that for some of you, if you're really honest, you've seen God do some pretty special stuff on your behalf too. Yet, they still reject him. And it baffles me. It bothers me. People could come in and hear the promise of peace in the midst of hard times. The promise to take that weight of guilt and shame that rests so heavy on your shoulders off of you. And the promise of eternal security that can never be taken away. And yet they just say, you know what, I don't want it. I hear you. I even like what I hear. You know what? I even believe most of it, but I don't want it, not nearly as much as I want to maintain control. I don't want it, not like I want to just live my life on my terms, do it my way, and maybe I could just roll the spiritual dice with Jesus at the end. Because Jesus knew not everybody was going to be a follower, so he says if, not since. He says if anyone would, and that tells us something else really important. If anyone would, means that anyone could. It's an open invitation. Anyone can come. He says, I'm inviting you to come on this lifelong adventure with me. Anyone could come, but not everybody that can come is going to come. You could come. The invitation is open to you right now in this moment. you could come. You could decide right now that you want to be a follower of Jesus. Right there where you're sitting. You could confess your sin to him. That's where it starts. You could trust him as the only one who could take that sin off of you, and you could walk out of here different than when you came in. And it doesn't matter what you've done up to this point. It does not matter how many times you have heard a message just like this one and decided that you were going to take off following Jesus, and somewhere along the way you turned around and went the other direction. It doesn't matter. Right now, this morning, you could respond to his invitation to follow him, and you could follow him for the rest of your life. You could do that right now. Everybody that wants to follow Jesus can follow Jesus, but not everybody that could follow Jesus will follow Jesus. In spite of what they know, but why? Why wouldn't someone know it all that he wants to do for them? Why would anybody not want to be a follower of Jesus? And Jesus begins to tell us in Mark, the rest of this verse, Mark 8:34 says, if anyone would come after me, let him deny himself. Jesus says, I want you to follow me. Anybody can follow me, but I want you to know up front that if you do, it's going to cost you something. Jesus is not a used car salesman in this moment. Sorry, Avery. Well, yeah, sorry, buddy. No offense. No bait and switch here, man. No timeshare presentation. You ever been to one of those? I went to a lot of them the first 10 years of our marriage. That's the only way we could go on vacation, you know? I could do their presentation better than they could. None of that where you promise all the good stuff up at the beginning, and then when you finally sign on the line, you find out about all these hidden costs at the bottom of the page in the fine print. This is not where Jesus was. He just said, look, I'm not going to give some emotional, heart-wrenching story at the end of the sermon and ask everybody who wants to go to heaven to raise their hand. That's not what this is. I'm just going to tell you right up front that you're welcome to come with me, but if you do come with me, I just want you to know that you're going to have to deny the thing that is the hardest thing in all the universe for you to deny, and that is yourself. Everything else is easier to deny by comparison, is it not? It goes against every natural fiber of our being. And I want to make a point here that denying self like Jesus is talking about and self-denial like we normally think about it, they're not the same thing. Hopefully all of us practice a little self-denial every day. Anybody ever been on a diet? You don't have to raise your hand. I'm kind of on one right now. People say, how much weight you lost? And I'm like, this time or like all together? Like lifetime, I'm at like 827 pounds, but this time I'm at like 6, you know? But it's all about self-denial. Myself wants to eat tater tots and ice cream, but I practice a little self-denial, and instead I eat a salad or some other thing that I don't like at all. Myself wants to take the family on vacation next summer, so I practice a little self-denial in terms of my Amazon Prime account so I have some money left over. Self-denial. Myself wants to watch TV in the afternoons, but instead I go to the gym with Roseman so that I can wear the pants that I like or some other thing. That's self-denial. But the truth is, all of those things that we associate with self-denial really don't have anything to do with denying self at all. In fact, all of those things are all about how much control that we can maintain over our lives and our bodies so that we can get the results that we want, so that I can wear the pants that I want, so that I can have more money than I've got right now, so that I can feel good or whatever it is. And Jesus says, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about you trying to maintain control so that you get the results that you want. I'm talking about you relinquishing all control so that I get the results that I want. That's what this is. It's different. It says you're going to have to release control over your life to me. Here's what you're going to have to say is that really, Jesus, here's what I'm understanding. All this time I've been thinking that my life was actually my life. And what I'm understanding now is that actually my life was never my life at all. It's always been yours. And from this moment forward, I'm going to acknowledge that and I'm going to follow you wherever you lead me. That's what it means to deny self. It's to deny our rights to have control over our life and to be comfortable all the time. And that's really hard for us. It's really hard for us because we are inundated on all sides, aren't we? With this self-oriented, self-centered, be all you can be social media culture. It's everywhere. The self-gratifying meme culture that we live in. And we teach it to our children. You believe in yourself. It's not good advice. What do I know? Follow your heart. What terrible advice that is to teach a child. Because let me tell you this. Unless that heart is fully surrendered to the Lord Jesus in every single way, following your heart will lead to heartbreak every single time. I saw people wearing a t-shirt yesterday, a lady wearing a t-shirt the other day, and it said this, and it sounds like a sweet phrase, and if you've got this t-shirt, I still love you. But it said this, it said, do what makes you happy. That's about as godless a phrase as I could possibly think of. Jesus says, if you're going to come after me, you're going to have to take off your do what makes you happy t-shirt and throw that in the trash, and you're going to have to put on your do what makes me holy t-shirt. It's a harder shirt to wear, I'm telling you. That's what it means to deny self. We've turned our feelings into our God, haven't we? Here's what our society teaches us, that if it feels good to you, then it must be right for you. And Jesus says, I'm telling you, that's not true. Where I'm going, you're going to have to deny your feelings sometimes too. It's not always going to feel right in the moment, but I'm telling you, I know the way. And if you'll follow me, I'll get you there safely, but you're going to have to leave some things behind. It's really hard to deny ourselves. How many of you would admit, I've been super into following Jesus. I want to follow Jesus, and I followed him right up to that point where it became really clear to me that he was going to take my life in a direction that I was not willing to go. So instead, I just kept walking my own way, praying the whole way that he would just bless me anyway. And Jesus says, it doesn't work like that. You're going to have to deny yourself. You can't be in control anymore. And if I was Jesus' PR man, not that Jesus needed a PR man, but I'd be like, you know what, Jesus? Maybe you ought to back it down a little bit. This denying self-talk is not good for recruiting, Jesus. You're hurting the numbers. Nobody's going to want to come. Jesus doesn't back it down. In fact, he takes it up a notch. Second thing, you got to deny yourself, and then you got to die. Yeah. Die to yourself. Yeah. Same verse. If anyone would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross. What does it mean to take up your cross? It's hard to understand for us because we got crosses everywhere. Tattoos and necklaces, and we decorate churches with them. I even saw a cake made in the shape of a cross. I do not understand why anybody would eat food in the shape of a cross. I think that's weird. But they're everywhere. Gold-plated, shiny things. The cross was none of that. It was this gruesome emblem of inhumane death. That's why I think it's offensive when we take this particular verse and kind of turn it into a cliche, and I hear people do it, like, man, I hate my job. My boss man, he's a pain, and my whatever. But I got these kids to feed, so I guess that's just my cross to bear. It's not that. It's unfathomably worse than that. We talked about it some last week. But people who had been condemned to die on the cross would be made through the middle of town to carry the cross upon which they would be executed, so that the town could come and watch them and mock them and humiliate them and know their guilt and their shame. And you would carry your own cross to the place where you were to die, but first they would strip you publicly naked, Imagine that. And then they would skillfully beat you within an inch of your life, but not so far gone that you couldn't still suffer for a long time. And then they would drive nails into your hands and your feet, and you would hang there until you suffocated to death. And if you didn't suffocate fast enough, then someone would come along and beat your legs until they were broken, until you could no longer push yourself up to breathe. That's what the cross was. And Jesus says, look, I want you to follow me. It's an open invitation. It's worth it in the end. But you're going to have to leave some things behind. And if it comes to it, you might have to take up your cross. Dietrich Bonhoeffer famously said, before he died in a Nazi concentration camp for refusing to stop talking about the Lord. He said, when Christ calls a man, he bids him come and die. That's the invitation. Jesus says, they may, if you come where I'm going, they may hate you the way that they've hated me. They may humiliate you the way they've humiliated me. There's some people you really loved. They may leave you, reject you the way that they have done to me. There may be trouble. You could go to jail. You could die. The reward's worth it. And I won't ever leave you. But the cost is really high. And I just want you to know that up front. That's hard for us in our consumer-oriented church culture, isn't it? We'll leave a church, won't we? This preacher over here said some stuff I don't like, so you know what I'll do? I'll just go find another one. There's a lot of them. I don't like the music there. It's too loud. It's too crowded. Chairs are too uncomfortable. Church is too long. I had a lady tell me one time she stormed out into the lobby and found me, said she was never coming back to church because it was too cold. Here's what we say. We say things like this. Well, I really like that church over there, but I think we're going to go over here. They just got so much more going on for my kids. Here's the truth. I am grateful. I am grateful for American freedom, aren't you? Yeah. Like, I'm USA all the way guy. I really am. I'm grateful for American freedom, but here's what I fear. That many generations now of taking American freedom to worship as we want to worship and when we want to worship, many generations have taken that for granted, has made us, I fear, just a little bit soft. See, we didn't have to endure any great danger to get here this morning, did we? Traffic on 127, probably the worst thing we had to face. And here's what I think. I think because we've gotten a little soft to that and a little accustomed to it, it causes us to throw this persecution word around just a little bit too liberally. It's football season right now. Amen, right? I'm glad about that. I love it. I'm here for it. But mark my words, there's probably going to be some story that comes out pretty soon about some high school coach in some little town somewhere that was trying to take a knee before the game to say the Lord's Prayer, and they told him he couldn't do that anymore. You know what? I hate that. Yeah. I think it's ridiculous. But I don't think it's persecution, not really. Taking some plastic nativity scene off the courthouse lawn or the Ten Commandments down out of our classrooms, we should fight against that, I believe. Yeah. It's time to draw some lines about that. But it's not persecution, I don't think. Not quite. This may offend some people in this room. Telling a football team that they can't turn the T in their mascot name into a cross, it's unfortunate. Wish they didn't do that. I don't think it's persecution. Not like so many of our brothers and sisters face right now. Did you know this? That 1 in 7, right now, 1 in 7 of our brothers and sisters all over this world are in real physical danger where they are. simply because they will not renounce their faith in the Lord Jesus. That's nearly 400 million people. There's a lot of places on this planet where being a Christian is the most dangerous thing that you could possibly be. Christian people, the most persecuted people on the face of the earth. Did you know that? That last year, the numbers are hard to track, that maybe as many as 100,000 people died because of their faith in Jesus. It's a lot of people. Did you know that in the decade between 2005 and 2015, not so long ago, that more Christians were killed in that 10-year period than in all the 2,000 years combined since Jesus' crucifixion? It's dangerous a lot of places to be a Christian. In Syria, where they had 1.5 million Christian people, that little population has dwindled down to 300,000. They've all been exiled or killed. 80% of them. In Iraq, that's historically, that's the biblical land of Daniel that we talk about, and Jonah. A thriving, vibrant Christian community of 1.2 million people, 120,000 now, 90%. There's a real concern in the next few years that the church could be eradicated there altogether. And in China, the Chinese government, the communist government, has destroyed about 7,000 churches. And famously, I read an article this week. There's a big famous church. It was a big mega church. The government came in and blew it to bits with dynamite. That's what they did. So many of our brothers and sisters right now in underground prisons, and we don't even know. But the worst place probably on this planet to be a Christian is in North Korea, where right now 70,000 of our brothers and sisters in Jesus are enslaved in work camps simply because they profess their faith in Jesus instead of Kim Jong, whoever it is. I'm not sure we understand much about persecution. Not here. And here's what I think is that all of these people who were enslaved in those places, martyred, some of them in those places, they all knew the risk, didn't they? They're not dumb people. They knew the risk when they set out to follow Jesus. They knew there was danger involved, but they followed him anyway. Why? Why would they do that? Think about those people in those slave camps right now. I think maybe they think this. As awful as it is to live this life where I'm oppressed every day, here's what else I know. Is that I was born into this world oppressed. Completely in bondage to sin, and there was no way that I could be ransomed from it. But 2,000 years ago, my Lord Jesus, he held nothing back from me. He went all in, and with his very blood, he bought my freedom. And because he did that, there's nothing I won't do for him. I think they're thinking, as awful as this life might be, as hard as it is for us sometimes, here's what I know. That the reward, the hope of glory will so far overshadow our present troubles. So I'm just going to concentrate on that till we get to the end. See, the likelihood of anybody in this room, unless something changes, and I hope it doesn't, enduring any real physical danger, the likelihood that any one of us would ever actually be killed for professing faith in Jesus, as for now, it's really, really small. Hope it stays that way, don't you? But here's what I know. As foreign as that seems to us, every day when you wake up, here's what I think you might need to do. I might need to do. Is that every morning when we wake up, it's maybe a good thing for us just to get up and have ourselves a little funeral. And we take all those sinful desires and all those plans and dreams that are so important to us that don't quite line up with his plans and dreams, those habits we've been holding on to for a really long time. Our need to be comfortable all the time. We take all those things and we just kind of put that into a little pine box and we close the lid and we lay all that to rest before we start the day. Because if you don't put that stuff to death, if you don't put that stuff to death when the road gets hard and Jesus takes off to lead you in a direction that you might not really want to go, man, you're going to turn back. And Jesus says, I'm telling you up front, it's not easy. He says, 8:35 said, whoever would save his life would lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake and the sake of the Gospels will save it. Your life comes down to two choices. You could spend the rest of your life focused on you, whatever you want. And you might be more comfortable in the meantime, but you could get to the end of it and lose it, Jesus says. His soul, he means. Or you could choose to follow him and the peace you can have right now in the midst of all of it, in this umbrella of hope of eternity with him that will shelter your whole life. It's worth it. But you got to decide. And there's the last thing. Deny myself and die to myself. Last thing, I got to devote myself. It says, if anyone would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. Follow is kind of a two-part word. It's a prefix that means same, and the last part that means way. Same way. You ever go to an elementary school or maybe a hospital, something like that, and they got those little footprints painted on the floor to kind of show you where to go? Color-coded, and even though you're a grown person and you know better, you almost sort of can't help yourself. You feel like you gotta put your feet right in every one of those footprints. It's kind of like that. That we would be so focused on going wherever the Master leads us. That we'd be really careful to make sure that every one of our footsteps just lands right there in the footstep of the Master. Not that we're going to follow him at some great distance, but we follow him so closely that we can see his every move. We begin to learn from him. We learn from him. We learn from him so well that before long we begin to think like he thinks. We think the same way that he thinks. Then when we think the same way that he thinks, we can begin to speak the same way that he speaks. And we watch him so close, we begin to treat people the same way that he treats people. If we follow him close enough, maybe we can begin to do the same things that he did. And even greater. That's what he promised, isn't it? You remember the story where James and Peter and Andrew, they're on the side of the shore. They're just washing their nets, right? Their nets that symbolized everything their life was going to be about until they got too old to do it. This was their plan. And Jesus just walks over to them, and what does he say? He says, follow me. What'd they do? They just left it right there. And they took off after Jesus. And for the next several years, Jesus would pour his life into these men, these fishermen. He says, I'm going to teach you everything I know. Because here's what I know, boys, that you don't know, is that I'm not going to be here very long. But when I leave this place, I want to leave out of here knowing for sure that I've taught you and equipped you and empowered you to take my gospel and to use it to change the whole world. And they did that. And here's what I'm telling you this morning. That Jesus calls you and I to not one bit less. He wants to use you to do some incredible things for the sake of the gospel. But you'll miss it unless you submit to his way. It's not just some behavior modification plan where we follow after Jesus so we can be nicer people and drink less and say less four-letter words and not sleep with people we're not married to. That's part of it, I guess. There's so much more than that. It's about saying, Jesus, I'm finally realizing that you're the master. From here on out, you're the master. I'm just the servant. You're the teacher, and I'm just the student. You know everything. I don't know much of anything at all. You know what, Jesus said, if I take off after you, here's what I'm ready to do. I'm ready to sort of wave this white flag over control of my whole life. I'm just going to surrender it all to you right now. We don't like that word surrender, do we? It's a really negative word in our world. Surrender means to forfeit. Surrender means that we quit, and we teach our kids, don't you ever quit, right? Surrender means losing. There's not one of us that wants to be, big L loser. We don't like to quit. We don't like to lose. And Jesus says, listen to me. In my economy, I want you to know something. In my economy, it's totally different. Here's the paradox of following me. If you want to win in this life and be victorious in the one to come, you will lose. You will forfeit. You will surrender your life. And you'll let me take control. Here's the bottom line for some of you this morning. And some of you, you're really bottom line people. Jesus says you're going to live the rest of your life one of two ways. You're going to do one of two things. You're going to either waste the rest of the time you got left making it entirely about you, and it may be more fun in the meantime sometimes, but you can get to the end ready to step off into eternity with no guarantee of what happens next, or you can invest it starting right now. And it might be harder, but there is a guarantee of reward with me forever, but you can't have both. Listen to me. Life on this earth is pretty short. We don't get long, and the older I get, the faster it seems to go. Isn't that true? And you can spend the rest of the time you got making sure that your life is as easy as it could possibly be, making sure that you and your people are as comfortable at all the time as they can possibly be, making sure you have enough money so that we can have all of the really cool experiences, because we all think our kids need all these experiences to be well-rounded, whatever that means. They don't need more experiences. You know what your kids don't need? They don't need to go to Disney World one more time, because that's not where the memories are made. You know what your kids need? They need to watch you chasing really hard after Jesus, so that they can learn to chase really hard after Jesus, so that in turn one day their children will learn from them what it looks like to chase really hard after Jesus. That's what it's about. You can spend your life working really hard, saving up, holding on to those dollar bills so that you can spend the last 20 years of it on permanent vacation, playing golf, walking up and down a beach somewhere. That's the American dream, right? You can spend all the time you got left trying to squeeze out every ounce of pleasure that this world has to offer. And you could get to the end of it and lose it. Lose it all. Here's a promise from Jesus. He doesn't break promises. If you will take off after him, if you will surrender to him now, if you will invest your life with him, man, there's a reward that waits. You could spend the 70 or 80 years, if you're lucky, that you get on control and comfort, or you can spend an eternity at the feet of and in perfect fellowship with the actual King of the universe. But you have to decide. One thing quick. It says, what does it profit a man? Verse 36, for what does it profit a man to gain the whole world and to forfeit his soul? You ever dream about what it would be like to just be really rich, like dirty, filthy, stinking rich? I do sometimes, Money can't buy you happiness, but I would like to prove them wrong, Read an article this week about a guy about a year ago who won a $2 billion lottery jackpot in California. That's a lot of money, isn't it? Like life-changing money. Permanent vacation, fly around on private jets from mansion to mansion for the rest of your life kind of money. And the article was all about all the really cool things that he had done with his money. Not one single mention of a dime that went to invest it in the kingdom or the gospel or anything like that. Just a lot of really cool stuff that he'd bought. Houses and vintage cars, and it all sounded so cool to me. But in a few short years, he is going to pass from this earth, and he will leave it all behind, and what a waste it will have been. Because what does it profit a man? What does it profit Elon Musk? He's a really cool guy. I'm kind of fascinated with him. He may be the richest guy in the history of the world, but best I can tell, he does not know the Lord. What does it profit a man? LeBron James, he may or may not be the GOAT. I don't care. What does it profit Donald Trump to have all the money, more money than you could spend, more power than you could wield? What does it profit me and you to spend the rest of this life chasing after everything this world offers and to step off into eternity with no guarantee? I want you to bow your heads. Every person in this room, I'm going to ask you a really hard question as we're closing. You know it's coming. Are you all in right now? Have you pushed everything that you've got to the center of the table on just one thing? Or there's some areas in your life where you're still holding out? How about on this church? Are you still holding out? Let me tell you something. Jesus loves his church. The church is the bride of Jesus, and he loves his bride. You cannot be all in for him and not all in on his church. Are you devoted to it? Do you defend it? Do you give to it? Or are you serving it well? And men especially, what about your bride? You all in for her? Let me tell you what your number one calling in this life is to follow the Lord Jesus wherever he leads you. And the number two calling in your life is to teach your family what it looks like to chase really hard after Jesus. You doing that? What about with your money and your time? Some habits maybe you've been holding on to for too long. Maybe today you could just push all that to the middle of the table. Go all in for him. God, we love you. And in this room, there's some people that are not all in. There's some areas in my life where I'm not either. God, forgive me.
Hey, if you enjoyed today's sermon and would like to be part of Authentic Church, go ahead and take the next step and sign up for our Next Steps online. You can live anywhere in the world and still be part of Authentic Church. Also, I want to say thank you so much for watching today. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure to either subscribe or follow to any of our social media accounts so that you can see any new content that will be uploaded. And if you'd like to give to this church to help us financially, go ahead and click that give button down below to help us reach more people for Jesus Christ. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again very soon.